Hi, this is Mark from myprojectsource.com. I hope you enjoy this excerpt from my new class, PMP Made Easy. So let's get started. All right, in this video, I'm going to cover how to document your work experience for the PMP exam application. So if you are in the process of trying to fill out your application, this video is for you. If you're just wondering whether you would even qualify to fill out the application because you're not sure how to document your work experience, or you're not sure if you have enough work experience, this video is also for you. So our agenda, I'm going to cover the eligibility requirements. Then I'm going to cover how to break down your work experience to show PMI. And then I'll show you how to use the supplemental worksheet or Excel sheet that I provide that helps you to quickly document your work experience. So let's review the PMP requirements in a little bit more detail before we get into how we document them. So there are two categories. Category one is if you have a high school diploma, associate's degree, or global equivalent. In that case, you're going to need 5 years or 60 months of what we call unique, non-overlapping experience, during which at least 7,500 hours were spent leading and directing project tasks. And I'm going to explain coming up what we mean by non-overlapping versus overlapping. And you're going to need 35 contact hours of formal education in something related to project management. Okay, so that's category one. Category two is if you have a bachelor's degree or global equivalent. Then you need a little bit less work experience. You only need 3 years or 36 months of unique, non-overlapping professional project management experience, during which at least 4,500 hours were spent leading and directing project tasks. And again, the same 35 hours of formal education. And by the way, you can go back from whatever date you fill out the application, you can go back in time up to 8 years to get your project management needed experience, this 3 years or 36 months and the 4,500 hours. You can go back 8 years, an 8-year window from the date you fill out to document that work experience. Okay, so let's take a look visually how this plays out when you think about these 36-month requirement and the 4,500 hour requirement. So basically what I've done is separated it. So you have basically what I call it a chronological requirement, because it's chronological in that you just have to be on the job doing project management for 36 months, regardless of what percent you're actually a project manager. So you could be just 10% a project manager, but for 3 years straight you did project management, but only 10%. That would qualify for this chronological 36 months. But of course, that wouldn't be a whole lot of project management time because you only did 10%. That's why they also have the cumulative requirement. And the cumulative is just the cumulative hours, the total hours that you actually did project management. Okay, so if you did 1 hour per day, 5 days a week, that'd only be 5 hours per week of project management experience. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So I said you can go back to 8 years. So this first example is what we call non-overlapping projects, right? Because the project, you don't do 2 projects at the same time. So in this example, project 1, I did 7 years ago. I was on it for 24 months, okay, and I was 50% assigned to be the project manager, and 50% I did other tasks. Maybe I worked on work packages, or I was an engineer or software programmer, or whatever I was. So 50% I managed of my time, I was managing that project, and for 24 months. And if we imagine about 2,000 hours in a work year, which is approximately what you have over approximately 50 weeks of working. Then we've got about 2,000 hours per year. So at 50%, I'd get about 1,000 hours per year, and I was 24 months. So that would give me a cumulative 2,000 hours. Okay, so project one, I got a cumulative 2,000 hours, but I got a chronological 24 months because I was on it from 7 years ago to 5 years ago. So that's 24 months. So I will get a full 24 months credit, even though I was only 50%. Let's look at the next project. So I took a year off from project management. I didn't do any project management for a year. And then 4 years ago to 2 years ago, I was also 50% a project manager. So that gave me another 24 months and another 2,000 hours. Okay. And then I took another year off. And then a year ago, up until today, I was 25% assigned to project 3, which would give me 12 chronological months and give me 500 hours, basically, if 2,000 hours per year, but I was only 25%, that would give me 500 hours. So now if I add up the cumulative, I get my 4,500 hours based on these 3 projects, and I would get 48 months of chronological credit. Of course, they would stop counting at 36 months, so I've more than exceeded the chronological. Actually, I'm looking at this as 48. This is actually 60 months, so I got a math error here. But this would be how you would add this up. All right, so now let's look at actually how we document the 36 chronological months and the 4,500 cumulative hours. Remember, you have to satisfy both the 36-month requirement and the 4,500 hour requirement. And the 4,500 hour requirement, remember, is a cumulative requirement. We've got to add up to 4,500 hours. And the 36-month is a chronological one. It just means we have to be assigned as a project manager regardless of the percentage of time. We just have to be, we have to mature, so to speak, as a project manager for at least 36 months. Means that regardless of the percentage of time, we were assigned as a project manager for those 36 months. So let's look at this example. Example 1 is a non-overlapping example. What does that mean? It just means that I wasn't assigned to 2 projects at the same time. So this is a more simple example because I'm not assigned to multiple projects at the same time. Now remember, I can go back 8 years. So here's time 0 is today, and minus 8 is 8 years ago. For this example, we're going to assume I worked on 3 projects. So let's take a look at project 1. Project 1, I was assigned as the project manager 50% of the time. Now, I could have also been on that project as a software programmer the other 50% of the time, but I only get to count the 50% that I was doing project management. So I'm on this project for 50% as a project manager. I'm on it for 2 years, from year 7 years ago to 5 years ago, 50%. Now, how does that work in terms of chronological and cumulative? Well, for chronological, because I'm on it for 24 months, it doesn't matter the percentage. So I do get my 24 months for that. Now, what about the cumulative? Well, the average working year is about 2,000 hours if we round it off. So we could say that we got about 1,000 hours per year. So I was on it for 2 years. So I got 2,000 cumulative hours here for project 1. Now, moving on to project 2, you see here I have a gap year, right? I took a year off. I didn't take a year off, but I didn't do project management for that year. So there's nothing for me to count. So then 4 years ago, I was on another project. It was real similar. So I was also the project manager 50%, and 50% I did non-project management. Also 2 years, I would get another 24 months of chronological. and another 2,000 hours of cumulative. Okay, and then I took another year off, and then my last project, project 3, which is my current project, I'm project manager 25% of the time. So that one I would get 500 hours cumulative and 12 months chronological. So when I add up all my chronological time, it's really just all the months regardless of the percentage. So that comes out to 60 months, which far exceeds the 36 months I need. But in terms of cumulative hours, I just make it and I get my 4,500 hours. So this is an example of how it works between the chronological and cumulative. And this is what we call a non-overlapping, meaning the projects do not overlap in terms of I did not work on 2 projects at the same time. Okay, now let's look at example 2. Example 2 is overlapping. That means I did work on more than one project at a time. So let's take a look at this. It looks like project 1 I was 25% on from 4.5 years ago to 2 years ago. And then from 4 years ago to 2 years ago, I was also assigned to project 2 for 50%. Then I had a year off, and then I was 75% assigned as a project manager to project 3. So let's look and see how that plays out in terms of the chronological and the cumulative. So let's take a look at project 1. Project 1, 25% for 2.5 years. Well, that's really easy in terms of the chronological. It is, right? It's the 30 months. It's the 2.5 years. The cumulative, remember, 25% gives me about 500 hours per year. So I got 500 plus 500 plus 250 for this little half year here. So that's 1250. All right, let's go over to project 2. What happened there? I'm 50% on project 2 for 2 years. Now, look what happened in chronological. I can't count anything. 0. Why? Because it overlaps. You don't get chronological credit for overlapping projects. You can only take one of the projects. And when you fill out your application, it's probably going to be the first project that you put in is going to take that chronological credit. The next project, if it's overlapping, will not add any more to your chronological credits. However, you certainly will still get your cumulative credits. And I was on that project for 2 years at 50%, which is about 1,000 hours per year, which is going to give me 2,000 hours. So that's great. So I got 30 months. I've got 1,250. I got 2,000. So now I'm going to keep going. Project 3, I was on 75% for 1 year. It did not overlap, so I will get 12 months for that. And I will get 1,500 hours for 75% of 2,000 is 1,500. So I will get my 1,500 hours for that. And now we can see that I am getting a total of 42 chronological months. So I made the 36, and I got 40,750 of cumulative. So again, this is another example. I would qualify under this example. Even though I had overlapping projects, I was still able to get enough of both chronological and cumulative. So this is how the overlapping works. All right, so the next thing you have to do, yes, you need your chronological and cumulative, but on the actual application, you're going to also have to break down your project experience into what PMI calls the 5 process groups. Okay, so let me show you how that works. So you do need your 24 and 2,000 hours here for project 1, but you also need to break that down. This 24 months and 2,000 hours, that's what I call the level 1 breakdown. But you'll have to go to a deeper breakdown to what I call level 2, and level 2 is according to the 5 process groups that are shown in the PMBOK. And those 5 process groups are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So I'm going to have to take, if I look at project 1, I'm going to have to take my 2,000 hours. I'm going to have to break it down across those 5 process groups. So for example, I may have had 100 hours initiating, 400 hours planning, 1,000 hours executing, 400 hours monitoring and controlling, and 100 hours closing. This is just an example of how you might break that down. Now, that is where most people struggle, because most people say, well, I didn't record what I was doing when I was on the project. I didn't even know I was going to apply for the PMP exam. Of course not. So that's why we have to have a method for estimating that, and that's what I'm going to show you next. All right, before you even start filling out your application, it's going to be helpful to have all your work experience documented and know the amount of hours that you've got for the 5 process groups for each project, and also verify your chronological and cumulative hours. So how are we going to do that? So before you fill out the application online, it's helpful to use our experience worksheet. This is a spreadsheet that helps you automatically check your hours and break down across the 5 process groups. So the experience worksheet is going to help you organize your hours for your level 1. So that's going to be your total, chronological and cumulative, but also go down to the level 2, which is going to break it down into the process groups. All right, so now I'm going to run through an example for you using our worksheet and our spreadsheet, how to document our chronological 36 months, our cumulative 4,500 hours, and our level 2 breakdown with our process groups. So let's assume that I've worked on 3 projects. I worked on the yellow project 100% for 1 year, and then I had overlapping between the green project and the orange project, and I was 50% on both of those. So I should end up with 36 months of chronological and 4,800 hours of cumulative. So let's take a look at that, and let me switch over now to the spreadsheet. All right, so here, make that a little bit bigger for you. Let's see if I can get that to expand. There we go. All right, so here's our spreadsheet. So what we've got is a spot for each project. The spreadsheet comes with a place for 4 projects. If you need more, just copy the spreadsheet and save it and keep going with multiple copies. But let's take a look at what we've got here. So we've got the first side, the left side, is going to be our level 1 breakdown. It's going to add up our months, and we're going to put in our percentage, and it's going to calculate our hours. So basically, what I'm going to do is just come in here and put my start date and my end date for that project, and then it's going to automatically calculate my total hours and cumulative months. So let's just go ahead and put some dates in here, and let's say that from 1/1/20, let's see, we've got our yellow project is 1 year, so we'll go from 1/1/2018, okay, to 1/1/2019. Okay, so that's 1 year. I've got 12 months. 100%. If we look back at our example here, we're 100% on yellow. It's going to calculate 40 hours per week times the number of weeks that you have in that time frame. So 1 year is going to give you 1,920 hours. Then what you have is the level 2 breakdown. In the level 2 breakdown, you can adjust the percentages as you like. So here, just make sure that the percentages add up to 100%. Now, you can see I do have a default in here with 10% initiating, 25% planning, 30% executing, 25% monitoring and controlling, 10% closing, as long as it adds up to 100%. The percentage you're on the project comes here in column E, so don't adjust that there. Now, notice on the yellow project, I'm saying I was not around for initiating, so I didn't do any initiating. But I did do planning. I did a lot of executing, monitoring and controlling, and a little bit of closing. And my percentage adds up to 100%. And that's how I start to get my hours across the 5 process groups down here at the bottom. All right, so let's go to our next project. Let's go to our orange project. Orange project I was also on for 1 year prior to the yellow project, but only 50%, right? So let's take a look and see how that works. So that I'm going to put then from 1 year. So I'm going to put 2017 here in this one. Okay. And then I'm going to put 2018 here. Oh, did I make a different? Made a boo-boo. Here we go. All right, 12 months, 50%. Going to give me 960 hours. I'm going to leave these default percentages in here. I'm happy with that. And now I've got a total of 2,880 cumulative hours, and I've got 24 months. Okay, now the green project is my next one, and the green one is I am 50% on that thing for 2 years, overlapping 1 year with the orange project. All right, so let's start that one here. 2 years, so let's start that in 2016. Okay, and we're going to end the same time as the orange project. Okay, here in 2018. And voila, we got our 4,800 hours. Now, one thing I'll tell you about the spreadsheet is it's not smart enough to not double count your cumulative months here. So you notice from the slide, we know that we can only count 12 months of the green project, not 24. So you're going to have to subtract out from this 48 any cumulative. So this is 12. There are 12 overlapping months. So this is really 36 months. Okay, so just make sure that you do that on the actual application. They'll subtract it out for you, but the spreadsheet does not. Okay, so then I'm also 50% on that for 2 years. That gives me 1,920 hours. And now let's suppose I said, well, I was a lot executing, but I didn't do any closing because it was still running when I left the project. So I'm going to put 0 here. All right, I still have my 4,800 hours. As long as this number in the last column adds up to 100%, you're fine. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, do I need hours in every process group on every project? No, you don't need hours on every process group on every project. I do recommend that you try to get throughout all your projects, get some hours in every process group, but you don't have to have, for example, initiating on every project or closing on every project. Most people have the middle 3. That's usually a no-brainer. Everybody has that. Yeah, the initiating and the closing are a little tricky, but if you initiate a phase to a project or you close, let's say, a major phase, it's basically, are you doing closing activities? It's not, are you closing the whole project? So you could be archiving records, and that would be part of closing. Or you transferring a part of the project to another team, that's closing. Initiating would be like determining scope or having a major change request if you're updating the objectives to the project. That would be part of initiating. So if you're, so think of it a little bit more broadly. If you're doing any of the things that you do during initiating or the things that you're do during closing, you can also include that. All right, if you haven't yet finished, doing your studying or haven't read the PMBOK or haven't gone through a course yet, then you're not real educated on what these 5 process groups are. So you may want to hold off on filling out your application until you kind of go through the material. And then once you've gone through the material, then, of course, then you'll know what really is initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And then it'll be easy for you to fill this out. But if you're just wondering whether you overall, from a level 1 perspective, will qualify, then by all means come in here and fill this out. And then you can kind of just guess at your percentages here. Okay, so definitely you want to download this spreadsheet, and you want to fill it out, and rename these projects for your project, and make sure that you're achieving both your cumulative months and your 4,500 hours. So that's at 36 months and your 4,500 hours. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation. And one last thing, if you want to start your application, or when you're ready to start your application, basically you've got to go to pmi.org, www.pmi.org, and look for PMP certification, start your application. They do have they have different certifications, so make sure you're filling out the one for the PMP or the CAPM if that's the other one that you might be interested in, but not they have scheduling and risk and other things like that. But you definitely want to do the one for either the PMP or the CAPM. And that's it. I hope this helps you to understand how to document your work experience. All right, to download your own version of this experience spreadsheet that you can fill out for your own work experience, go to www.myprojectsource.com/application. That's www.myprojectsource.com/application. If you would like to start your free trial of PMP Made Easy, that includes unlimited access to the first 4 modules of the course, go to www.myprojectsource.com/easy. That's www.myprojectsource.com/easy.